In this episode, I'm going to share why I got started, how I got started, and what's going on now. Every journey has an origin. I fell in love with the blues before I had them. It was grown folks' music. It was the music of high times, laughter, and private sorrow. I saw it as a kid and didn't see it at the same time. The blues, it's music, it's a vibe, it's a feeling, and it's my life. Hi, I'm Reverend Ken Blanchard, and welcome to Bluescast. Whether it's the best of times or the worst of times, it's the only time we've got. Art Buchwald. It's been a while since I've been on the microphone. At this season of my life and the challenges I'm facing as a caregiver for my spouse, it might seem like a strange time to make my passion my profession, but I'm doing it. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King says it's never the wrong time to do the right thing. And this is my story. My guitar journey started the first time I heard B.B. King on my father's record player. The music cut through the noise I saw as a child. I wanted to be able to speak with the guitar the way he was. Hearing his unique vibrato and subtle bends was magical. I wanted all of that. I remember the effect it had on adults that was almost like when they were in church. I bought and usually sold a guitar in every stage in my life. And it was more like something I was going to get around to one day. It was like a decoration that I always had around. I went through the Mel Bay books with the plastic records in the back, the pocket cord and tab books, the cassette tapes, the VHS tapes, the CDs, and the DVD versions. Remember that? Looking back, I could have been awesome by now if I had continued. Music, like art, is not esteemed. Although a good enough artist to get an award in the Marine Corps for a pen and ink drawing that I did, and selling all of my oil paintings, art just didn't stick with me. After I got married and had a family, other things got in the way. I was still creative and started to embrace the blues in particular, and that journey was exciting. I loved the history, the lore, and the myths of the blues because it was the history of my family. I became obsessed with the styles and the personalities of the genre and wanted to start a radio station or become a host of a blues show where I could share my knowledge and learn. But that took me on another path. It didn't work. I started a business teaching firearm safety and ran into the world of gun rights and politics. Now, it was a risky endeavor because my government employer didn't like it. So I sacrificed a lot in hopes that this controversial topic of gun control would make me rich or at least allow me to support my family if I went all in. As a leader of the movement, responsible for the lives of people, I sought spiritual help. And that led me to a call in the ministry. And this was also fraught with controversy because I was a gun-toting preacher that rode a Harley and worked for the CIA. Seemed like I did everything at the same time. I didn't realize the power of focus. Looking back over my life and what I have done seems fictitious. I failed at doing more things than most have even thought about. My only regrets, though, I didn't focus on one course of action until I had exhausted it all. I quit too soon, almost in every venture. And my list is almost as larger than I like to own up to. If you look back at your life, you probably got a long list too. Like, I almost went to the U.S. Naval Academy. I almost studied art at Cornell. I almost drowned in the Pacific Ocean. I almost was struck by lightning twice. I almost had a television show. I almost was the host of America's Most Wanted. I've shared a stage with Donald Trump, Charlton Heston, Wayne LaPierre, and Reverend Al Sharpton. I was considered for a sports show, a reality show, and was on a short list to host America's Most Wanted when the host wanted more money. Failure is not final. I am a risk taker. You get wisdom when you retain what you learn from making mistakes or learn from the mistakes of others. For me, I learn from each experience. I only wish I could have skipped the learning of some of it. No blind luck here. Here's how I think most of the time. What's the worst thing that could happen? And if it's not death or serious bodily harm, I usually go for it. I've learned to ratchet my pride down and dismiss my ego. When I screw up, I just accept it. At the worst, I'll have a story from it. They say you don't fall from a high place when you're close to the ground. I almost made $1 million once designing a t-shirt, but I blew the opportunity because I didn't believe the offer. I wasn't hungry enough to do what I thought it would take to be on television. I didn't trust the process. I didn't trust the people behind the scenes. Things just didn't feel right. So when I was close, I let it go. And I've blown other opportunities, but those are the ones that kind of stick up right now. Most of us are frustrated trying to keep up. We're mad at our failures. We want to blame someone or something. I think we're all in some various stage of depression. Now that I know what depression is, because I got it most of the time. And some of us are just so pissed off that we just want to cry. Believe me, I know. I've been into guns, though, since childhood. I was born in the 60s, and all my TV heroes had guns. The firearm culture was a part of Americana then. It was accepted that hunting season would cause a few boys to be absent from school as they spent time with their dads and uncles in the woods. I wanted to be in that crew, but never quite made it. It was not uncommon back then to see long guns in the back of pickup trucks. And the more rural you were, the easier your access to firearms were. They were just tools. They were also collectible items that were passed down in families. Not mine, but I've seen other people. They hadn't invented the term gun violence yet. Gun control is a business now. But my guitar journey, though, was interrupted by a lack of focus and a fear of failure. I loved the guitar since childhood, but didn't pursue it. I didn't realize that playing the guitar would be equivalent to therapy. I didn't know that I could have done it concurrently with other things I was doing. I wondered how far I would be now if I hadn't put all that on the back burner. Now I'm on fire for this stuff. I switched my focus from guns to guitars. I started my entrepreneurial journey as a firearms instructor back in 1990. I wanted to use my expertise and experience with guns to save lives in my community. And I quickly learned that my audience was not receptive to what I was delivering. I caught hell. Even though I was in law enforcement, I was a pariah. Things didn't get better when I answered a call into the gospel ministry. I wanted to arm selected members of church security, pastors, and child-proof the homes of hunters, collectors, and recreational gun owners. But I was way too early for that. Now it's no big deal, but this was 1990. Seeking to save my business, I pivoted into gun rights activism. Gun rights is an evergreen subject. At the time, the gun culture was self-segregated. Many organizations were actively seeking to integrate and grow their ranks by bringing in people of color, and it was a tough sell. And the original gun control laws were to keep firearms from people of color. So here was this group of gun-toting white people seeking gun-toting black people, and nobody trusted the process, and I was in the middle, making it happen. Problem was, gun rights advocacy wasn't profitable as a business, even though I was good at it. I worked with national and local organizations to testify, lobby, and give presentations about the value of standing up for your rights, citizenship, just being a damn citizen. The work changed my political views. I became a conservative. Always been a conservative. I just didn't know it. Like many in my family. My grandma was a conservative, but not the way they tell it. It became a bad word somewhere, but I digress. I matured a lot during this time. I saw needs not met to help people. Sometimes they didn't share my views, but they still were people in need. In some ways, this became my ministry. I used the lessons learned helping my community and others. I wrote and published a book called Black Man with a Gun, a responsible gun ownership manual for African Americans, while being employed as a janitor at a D.C. Metropolitan Church. I created a firearms consulting business and called it African American Arms and Instruction back in '92. I've lobbied the U.S. Congress on concealed carry. I've testified in the state legislatures of Virginia, Texas, South Carolina, Michigan, Maryland, and Wisconsin for the rights of all gun owners. I was instrumental in the passing of concealed carry reform in '92 for Virginia and Texas. I've done commercials for TV against racist gun laws, and I have been featured in a movie, Michael and Me with Larry Elder, the documentary. Also was in Dickens in America from the BBC, and Not Without a Fight in 2009 by Max Lemieux. But back in 2020, I even had a website, blackmanwithagun.net. Yeah, it was then. And folks didn't even have websites back then. I started a national gun club for African Americans called the 10th Cavalry Gun Club and became that ambassador, working for everybody. I even worked with the Jews for the preservation of firearms ownership, the Pink Pistols, and created the Latin American Gun Owners Group. But my success didn't come with money. But I did get sponsored by smaller companies and endorsed by just about everybody in the movement. So that was a good thing. But after 20 years, I played a part in almost every Supreme Court case or concealed carry reform law that happened since '91. I even helped H.R. 218 for retired law enforcement officers as a director of the Law Enforcement Alliance of America. And over the years, the culture changed and social media made it easier for the younger folks to do what I had done on radio and printed media, which was often controlled by people who were anti-gun. And I did all of this at great expense to my career in the government and my family. You know, I didn't get promoted for 10 years, as the mention of my name would invoke an investigation. And to my detriment, I became a world-renowned figure, known as the Black Man with a Gun. In 1999, my website was larger than the National Rifle Association's. And it took a few minutes to load, you know. But it gave the impression that I was rich. And it was at a time when America Online was 1.0. I started a podcast, too, 2007. We're talking origin story, right? Giving you all the background for what happened. For what you see now, I've gone through a lot. So that podcast in 2007 was a result of my gun rights activism. I'm still a hardcore advocate for freedom, civil rights, and gun owners, but I'm allowing the young guns to take over now. I had so many first. Today, there's a National African American Gun Owners Association that is larger and more organized than the group I started. There are personalities and celebrities that have millions of views on social media that dwarf the number of people that brought my books, heard my voice, or saw me briefly on the news. The price of ammunition and the increase in acceptance of bad behavior slowed my willingness to shoot or teach publicly. I got tired of defending the gun owner against criminal actions just for FaceTime. I sold a lot of my arms on consignment and didn't replace them. You know, I used the money to buy my wife a nice wedding ring that she sported before her retirement from government service. And then, in the year 2019, I decided to try again with my guitar goals. And then my life changed again. My wife of 30 plus years retired during the beginning of COVID-19. That pandemic was a monster, wasn't it? Only to realize that the headaches she was having was caused by a non-cancerous brain tumor the size of a small grapefruit. Upon discovery, doctors suggested she schedule surgery before she went blind, had a stroke, or died. We, as in the family, sought the best treatment available, and she was accepted for surgery at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore in May 2021. The surgery was successful. The procedure went through her sinuses and removed 90% of the tumor in the front lobe of her brain. The bad part is, she has not walked since then. She has had, 2 more surgeries on her head, fungal meningitis, 2 blood clots, 2 bouts with pneumonia. She's been in the hospital about 4 or 5 times. And in January of 2023, she had another shunt put in her head to drain the excess fluid. During these 2 years, I found peace in playing and learning the guitar. It was something I always wanted to accomplish. I found out that it was also really good therapy. It took my mind off of my pain for every moment it was in my hands. It was a blessing through music. Me personally, I have been told that she only had weeks to live. I wrote her eulogy once. I've been so low I can play handball on the curb. I've been depressed. I've been grieving the loss of life, how things used to be. And when the pandemic subsided in 2023, it had been a while since she walked or shared our bed. During that time, I did get a new job. I even got a raise. And I had to get a new job so I could afford the care for her. I couldn't retire. So I've been going through a lot of mental stuff. And playing has helped me. I've been hiring and firing health aides that I pay for privately because there's a new culture going on, where folks don't want to work for the money they are supposed to get. They're inattentive. They're lazy. It's just bad for somebody to even come to work on time, to do what they've been hired to do and not slack when nobody's watching. I've had aides quit after 1 day in the house. Somewhere in all of that, I got a call from the organizer and founder of Indian Bike Week asking if I would play my guitar by campfire for a few nights. Now, though I felt honored, there was no way I was going to do that. I'm too inadequate. He said, I've been following you on Facebook and I follow you on YouTube. I'm like, dude, I'm grieving. I'm emotionally exhausted. I'm putting up my clips and I'm practicing videoing and editing, and I'm being creative, and I'm therapy. Yeah. I do want to play. I do want to be a professional. I do want to do that, but it's too early. But the music has been helping me. So to take my mind off of things, I've been actively buying and selling guitars. I even took a luthier class to learn a new skill. I've helped a few people. But it's been tough. The wife is showing signs of duress, and she was depressed, and we've been going back and forth to the hospital for almost everything. But even though I've been commended on a daily basis for taking care of my wife of 30 plus years, I feel like a fraud, which each platitude, and I can't fix it because I feel helpless. Nobody can tell me if she'll ever walk again because she doesn't even know. And after 2 more visits to the ER, this year, 2024, she had encephalitis. And I can pretty much say this has been the worst time of my life. But then there's the music. Since COVID, I've been playing guitar every Sunday at church. That's plus or minus 152 times, not counting the 2024 that I played with others. And I'm thankful for a pastor who allows me to sit in with the musicians. I would rather play to support worship than to sit in that raised pulpit and look over at the congregation from a seat of piety. I served for 5 years as a pastor. 7 technically, but 5 I count too. And before that, Church got toxic for me. I love God, but not his people all the time. I hate politics and bureaucracy. And during my time as pastor, I've been touched by the abuses of power, corruption, and scandals with peers and church elders. But looking back, I now know the challenge lies in striking a balance between institutional structure and having faith. Both are necessary to be in a healthy church. But for right now, I'll serve anywhere, just not as pastor. And it's during this pandemic, I keep forgetting to bring that up, I had this time to recalculate a long-time desire to be a guitarist. Now, playing the guitar was perfect during the era of the COVID-19 lockdown. I was one of the millions that bought guitars during this time. Yeah, but you know what? We all have one thing in common. We all only have 24 hours in a day, no matter who you are. So, during that pandemic, and when my wife was doing something else, I started using my time to practice. Yeah, we spent a lot of time doing stuff. I started to take notice of the time I spent preparing for work, sitting in traffic, eating, doing actual work, spacing out, watching TV, sleeping, and entertaining myself. I had less time than I thought I did. And it was only after I realized that I was in the third quarter of my life that I started to pay attention to how much time I had spent on nothing. The more you know yourself, the more you understand life, and the more you value your time. Maximi Olagasi. And I just realized that my time is limited, so it's game on for guitar for me. Friends are amazed now when we watch YouTube. I'm playing like I am, but I haven't always been here. I just realized that deal about time. Learning the guitar. It's a forward-looking process, kindling hope and optimism. And you might not know this, but it helps regulate some mood chemicals in your brain like serotonin and dopamine. And for me, it gives me joy. I can physically chart my progress. And it's cheaper than therapy and doesn't leave any bad side effects. I replaced many of the guns I had with guitars. And each style helps me to learn something, help my progress. And I've been buying and selling them so much, I decided to start a side business, which also helped me. So now I do minor repairs and setups for guitars and basses to help others get their sound and their favorite instruments back on track. This year is all about growth to me. I now know what my life is all about. I know who I am and what I am not. I try to get along with most people, the rest I leave alone. I'm still working on me. And I'm the only one I can control. Life keeps it interesting because it never fails to throw curveballs at you. And even when all that's happening, I'm trying to live my best life. And that comes easier when you try to help somebody else out. So I decided to help the founder of Indian Bike Weeks invite to come and play in August of 2024. I started to prepare for a journey to the campgrounds of New Richmond, Wisconsin. It's an outdoor event for Indian motorcycle owners, even though it's not supported by Polaris, Indian motorcycle dealerships, or anybody. And as an owner of an Indian motorcycle, I was interested in making that 1,800-mile trip to be around other Indian motorcycle enthusiasts. But with my wife and the way that she was, I couldn't quite figure it out or couldn't validate it in my head. But then I was invited again to play. And now I have been playing for 3 years. And you only live once, right? So I got good news for you. I successfully traveled to the 2024 Indian Bike Week in New River, Wisconsin, and performed for 3 days as a guitarist. It was a 3,500-mile round trip, and I did it with my new best friend in a almost new Toyota Tundra that was excellent. The weather was right, and after buying a new tire and getting my first service at the dealer, I was fired up. The annual event for Indian motorcycle enthusiasts is put together by a private entity and not supported or sponsored by Polaris, the makers of the bike. The event features scheduled rides around Minnesota and Wisconsin, live music, me, and food vendors at the campground. About 450 people registered last year for this one, and I performed for about 100 of them. In the beginning of this plan, I had intended to trailer my Challenger, my motorcycle, and participate in the rides, but I'm glad I didn't. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. I was already stressing about leaving my wife, who was now bedbound, but I needed this trip. I had to go. I was depressed. I was tired. I was angry. I was frustrated. I had to get the hell out of here. But renting a U-Haul was too risky to haul my bike. I don't know if you've been to U-Haul lately, but it's got the same sorry people that work for the healthcare people. They don't give you a lot of confidence. So I chose to leave my bike in the shed. The stress that was accumulating was unwanted. Well, the ride was seamless. I got 21 miles a gallon in my big truck. Wisconsin is a beautiful and a clean state. Everything I'd bought in the past 2 years was in preparation for this trip, and I used it all. The only thing that broke was a power source for my guitar pedals that I plugged in with the wrong adapter. And doing so, fried the circuits, was not a good start. Upon arrival at the campground, the founder called and asked if I could perform now, and I was expecting to start the next day and play for the next 2 nights. Fortunately, my pedals were also battery operated, and I disconnected the pedals and used fresh 9 volts for the next 2 days. I'll probably buy a combo pedal in the future if the wah pedal is good enough. I don't need much but a volume, a tuner, and something in Texas blues sound and that wah thing, right? And I'm good. You know, I got through the first day and played 3 hours without taking a break. The adrenaline was still working. I screwed up a few of my favorite songs by forgetting the lyrics, truth be told, and singing out the wrong key. I played a Maze song featuring Frankie Beverly that my wife would have liked, that brought me to tears while I was performing it, but nobody paid attention to me, I don't think. She would have liked that if she had heard it. You know, at the end of the first day, it was 8 o'clock, and I was glad that I had bought the tent, the fan, and all the extension cords. And hoping my wingman had taken some good pictures, I vowed to do better the next day. We stayed at an old, musty hotel, but it was okay. Found out that there was a brand new one down the street that I didn't even know about, but it was a costly one. The motel, though, was cheap, and we stayed for 5 nights. We found a good place to eat next door for breakfast and a base of operation about a mile down the strip at a bar with a rooftop that was open to us. The locals didn't pay us much attention at all. We were clearly not from there, you know. I slept for the first time in a few years. You know, the second day I suited up in character and played slow blues all day. The weather was perfect at 5 p.m. and the sun wasn't hot. Most of the riders were out, so only the campers, the old-timers, and the vendors enjoyed me. And I had a blast. I was made for this, and I was loving life again. It was still light enough to see, so we walked around the campground and talked to people. The organizer was so stressed out, he asked if I was going to start playing anytime soon. Puzzled, I looked at him and I said, I just finished playing for 3 hours. He had forgotten. I saw him before he left to pick up Lorenzo Lamas and told me to start anytime you want. Then he asked if I could play later on Wednesday after like 6, so I agreed. The next night was a little different. Some of the vendors had left. They might have been out of food. The veterans ride and another group ride to most of the bikers had taken most of the bikers a long way out of town and they hadn't got back yet. But I spent the day in mindfulness and mental preparation for playing in the dark. It had stormed a little bit before, and my tent had fallen over. But it was all good. Using the internet and YouTube, I pulled up some new funk tunes and got a couple dancing. They were celebrating their 42nd anniversary, and I felt honored to bring it. A quick ride to Walmart earlier, I had bought a trash can that now became my tip jar, and it was visited regularly. It was so cool. My first tips. I pulled the plug about 8:59 and checked myself for mosquito bites. They were fierce, but they didn't bite me that much, even though they bumped me a lot. A welcoming committee came to apologize for people not surrounding the stage and give me feedback, but I was cool with it. I understood that I was there for background music as people talked. And at my age, that's what I would have wanted. Critiquing my outfit and my marketability, I decided to go with the red and the black. I'll be my new colors. I was thinking cardinal or chili peppers. The color of the guitar was good too, but I might want to see what a red guitar looks like. The hat was working, and I will continue that to be my trademark, but I want to work on it. My amp could have been a little louder, though, so I might see if I can get something in tandem for the next outdoor rig. I think I'm going to invest in a effects board like Boss makes, or something close. I came back on Thursday and found out that the band was now setting up on stage, and the lead of the band was a really nice guy. Lived 4 miles down the road, he said. He gave me some words of wisdom and a few tips that I will heed. I had garnered some goodwill, and a few people told me that they preferred me to them. It was all good. Even if they were lying, it was a good thing to hear. Since I was not playing, I took photos with the celebrities there and prayed with the pastor of the Lakota Chapel from South Dakota. I made new friends there and would love to worship with the nations. We packed up on Friday and headed home. Stopped in Ohio for the night and caught a rainstorm on Saturday when we hit Maryland. I got home safe and found my wife was okay. I did start to worry that last day. But I'm trusting in God that He's behind this whole trip. And I'm trying to leave those worries behind. By the time we got to Chicago, reality did hit me, though. And I had to try to push down the anxiety of stuff I was going to be looking at soon. Overall, I had lost a few dollars on this trip, but it was worth it to feed my soul. Indian Bike Week 2024 is in the history books, but be forever in my heart. I got a rest from changing adult diapers, some sleep, some fresh air, and some new vistas. All right, so that's some origin for you. So about the stress that I've been going through. My first big performance at Indian Bike Week. And where I hope to go. I'll be talking to some professional blues players soon, so you'll get a chance to hear some of them. Have interviews on this show as well. The journey continues. Thank you for listening, downloading, following, and subscribing to Bluescast with Reverend Ken Blanchard. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube at Rev Ken Blanchard, and that's Ken with 2 N's. Talk to you next week. Shalom, baby.